Hello everyone, this is Prem Kumar. In this video, we are going to talk about the data set in Pega. So, what is data set? Let's first talk about data. Data can be sourced from different systems and it can be of different format. Whatever you see in the screen are the different source of data, or it can be of different format, like it can be of file format. It can also be from a database table. It can be of stream format, like Kafka stream can be an example. It can be like a Facebook data, live data, or YouTube live data. So data as a whole can be spread along different sources and it can be available in different format. Not only Pega application, if you take any applications, usually it may require some data from external systems. We have some kind of integration rules to get the data, but there are also other rules through which you can collect or retrieve a set of data. Data set is one of the rules that helps to collect a set of data that can be sourced from a different system. So data set is a rule in Pega and it belongs to the data model category. For example, if your application needs to connect to a Kafka source, then you can create a data set of type Kafka and then you can get those data into your Pega application. On a broader scope, data set type or source can be divided into 5 categories. The first is the DBM or the database management, and second is the file systems where you can connect to external repositories or to a relative path in the server location. And the third is general, where you will find some kind of generic sources. And fourth, you also have social, where you can connect to Facebook or YouTube. And fifth, you have stream. The big example is the Kafka stream, to which you can connect to and get the data into your Pega application. I'll briefly show you how to create a new data set and use it into the Pega Designer Studio. So let's get started. I'm currently into the Pega Designer Studio. Now I'm going to create a new data set. You can create it from Create menu or Record Explorer. If you click this type, there you will find different types the data set supports. We have already seen this. There are 5 main different types. And first I will start with explaining about the database table. It means our data is staying in a normal database table, and with the data set we are going to browse the data and fetch it into our Pega application. Now you may get a doubt that what is the difference between this data set and the other report definitions or the OBJ queries? More or less little bit same, but with report definition you can always get it, but with data set you can also browse as well as update the data. And data set can be referenced in the data flow, and data flow can be scheduled to run periodically, or it can also support some kind of real-time processing when you use type of stream. The usage of data set and data flow came into the picture in Pega 8 with the introduction of stream nodes as well. So try to find a good use case for this data set and try to implement it in your application. Now I am going to show you how I am going to use a data set to fetch the claims records case. When you use the type of database table, the applies to class is the key. Here I am going to fetch the claims records case. So my class is going to be claims request. And do a create and open. As you see here, it already found which table this class gets mapped to. This claims records class gets mapped to the PC A-Life claims app org table. And you also see all the configurations are pre-filled. You should specify the keys here. By default, if you look at this class definition, you will not specify the keys here because it belongs to your class group. And we already know the keys were defined under this class group as PYID. So I'm using the same key here. If you are having some other kind of config class, for example, if you have some kind of data class, then the keys will be automatically populated. I'm going to quickly show you how to create a data set for the class data admin operator ID, and there you will find it out. You see now the PY user identifier, the key is automatically filled because in this class the key is already defined as PY user identifier. That's why Pega easily identified. But for us, since we belong to a class group, we never specified the key in the class group. That's why Pega didn't identify. So we have to specify the key. Please specify the right key here. Partitioning key is kind of an advanced topic. You can also partition DB tables to improve your performance. For example, I have worked in projects where we have partitioned our history table because millions of data were there in the history table, and when you report the history table you get a lot of performance issue. So we partition based on some kind of date. So you can also have some kind of partition so that your query will go only to those partition table. So if your database table has millions of data and you have really used partitions, then you can specify the partitions key here. In my use case, I didn't use any partition, so I'm going to leave it as empty. Just do a save. Now that we have created a new dataset of type database table, you see how easy it is. You just configured a dataset under the class, and then when you run this dataset, you can retrieve all the data from the database table. Just go to select here, browse, and then click run. You will see the result. Currently I have only one claims request case. So what are the other operations you can do in a dataset? You can use this option. You see, you can browse. You can also browse by key. You can delete it. You can truncate the entire table, or you can also save. Save means it's kind of an update to the table. So where do we give a save? If you use this save option, you get some other options through which you can save some instances. So first, let's understand where we can reference this dataset. The datasets can be referenced at two main places. One, from a data flow run. Data flow run, you can think it of like an automated workflow. It just runs and it can source the data from a data set. So data set can be an input to the data flow, and that is one way. The other way is you can also refer the data set in the activity rule. So activity rule, you have a method of data set execute through which you can refer the data set rule. Shortly, I'm going to show you how to call a data set from an activity rule. And here you can also specify the maximum number of results to be retrieved. And finally, you can also specify the page under which you can retrieve the results. This is a normal way to do unit testing for your dataset. You can just run it and then check the results. Just like how you execute an activity, you can always run a dataset and do some action to get the results. Okay, this is a very simple dataset of using the database table as the type. So there may be some use cases where you can use this database table as source. Now let's create another data set of type file system. Let's go to file and then select the normal file. I say customer details as the dataset record and then create and open. So there are some configuration points which you have to fill. Now you understood one thing. If you use different types of dataset, the configuration is going to be different. It's not going to give you some kind of common rule configuration like an activity rule or a data transform rule. But with a data set, and different data set will have different configurations. Of course, because they want to use different sources, so they will vary. The configurations will vary. For file, definitely you need to have the location, the file name, and if there is some kind of encoding, decoding is involved, then you also need to know the mapping details, right? That's why you get all those configurations in a data set of type file. So file location, you have two options, either to use it on a repository or use it on an embedded file. First, I'm going to show you a very simple example of using the embedded file. So if I use this option, you see the configuration again varies. So here I have already prepared a simple CSV file of name, age, sex as the header, and you have my value, prem, age 30 and male. Now I will upload the same file. So here I chose the file and click upload. So that is going to upload the file. And you see here, it already did all the parsing. It pre-filled all the basic configurations. You can see the file preview as well. And it says like it is a comma separated. The type is of CSV. It pre-fills all other remaining details also. You can also change it if you need to customize the data in format. And even in the mapping tab, you see the name, age and sex, the columns are there, but it couldn't find the related property in this class. Only it found the PY name, so it displayed here. So for age, what I'm going to say is I'm just going to say PY label. Now I'm going to do a save. So what we did just now is we created a new data set of type file, and then we used a sample file or embedded file. Now let's run this data set first and check the result. I'm going to just do a browse operation here and then click a run. You see the results are already there in the clipboard. Result of 1, you see label, name and note. All these details are exactly parsed. So what you understand from here is, if you have a file with millions of records and if you want to do some kind of processing or get the data into Pega application, you can very well create a data set rule of type file, and then you can parse the data and get it into the property. You may be thinking that what is the difference between the file listener and this data set. More or less again it will work the same, but with the data set, when it works together with the data flow, it can exactly mimic what a file listener can do. With the data flow, as soon as you process the record, you can also do further processing in the steps of the data flow. And one more main difference is, with the data set, not only you browse the record, you can also save some records. Now I'm going to show you how to create a new CSV file with some record that is copied from the Pega application. When you use file location of embedded file, then you can only do the browse. But when you use files on repository, then you can also do browse as well as save. It means you can either import or you can also export the file. Now to do that, we can create a new repository configuration. I'm going to have it as a local storage. So I will quickly create the repository. As a prerequisite to create a repository, you need to have the repository administrator access role for your access group. Here you can choose different repository types, but I'm going to make it very simple to use only the file system. For the sake of this demo, I already created a folder of name files. I'm going to copy this and paste it here and do a save. Now you should be successfully connected to this local file path. You can also do a text connectivity for that and you should be success. Yes, of course it is success. Now we have successfully created a repository. Now let's go back to the dataset and use this repository connection. So here local file path is there. The next configuration is on path. Here you can specify a file path directly, or you can also use some manifest.xml file. I will explain the manifest.xml file at the end of this video. First we will directly use the file path. So here you can provide a file path. There are again two options. If you want to import, then you can specify the right file path. If you want to export, it means you are going to create a new file and put some data. There also you can specify the path. First I will show you the import part where the file already exists in the folder location, and then we will just import the data. Here again you don't want to specify the entire file path because already we use the repository location and it is pointing to the files directory. So I'm just going to say a file of name customer details .csv. So here what I'm going to do is I'm going to go into the files directory and import the data which are available in the customer details.csv. So let's quickly create a file of customer details.csv and put some data into the file. So here I have quickly created customer details.csv file and you have two entries. Now I'm going to use this file into the dataset. You can also click the preview file to check the content of the file and you see it correctly populated everything. And data protection, if you want to enable some kind of data protection to have some kind of encryption, decryption, then you can very well use this. In my scenario, I'm just going to keep it simple. I don't have any kind of sensitive data into the file, so I'm not going to use this option. Under file configuration, you will see the similar configuration what we saw before when we use the embedded file. You can specify the file type, you can specify the delimited character. Make sure you use the comma separated as the delimited character, and then datetime format, all these things which you saw before. And then in the mapping tab, you can also specify the link between the column which is in the file to the Pega property. I'm just going to use only one column for this demo. I'm going to say name, it will map to py name, and then do a save. Now let's run this data set to check the results. Click run. And then operation, you use the browse operation, get the 50 results into the operation result page, and then click run. You see the two results, and the name is the only field that gets mapped to the Pega property. And the first result will be Prem and the second result will be Raja. Okay, now with file, let's check the other options also. You can also use the same configuration to export the data. For now, we imported the data where the data is already in the file. We get it into Pega property. We can also do the other way around by getting the values from a Pega property and put it into the file or export it into the file. To export it into the file, if you are generating file very frequently, you need to have the naming convention for your file. And this file path, it supports similar to the file listener where you can specify some wild character. For example, if you specify customer details of star, then you can import the file customer detail of 1, customer detail of 2 and whatever files. Similarly, for exporting also, you can generate some kind of unique name. Pega also do append some unique character, but you can also specify some unique date time if you want. So I will say under percentage symbol, and this is going to be my unique file. Just do a save. Now if you run this activity from here and do a save, it expects some kind of page that is already defined. So we need to populate some page, right? So now this is the right time. Let's see how we can refer a data set from an activity rule. So I already created an activity. From here, you can use the method of DataSet execute. You check here, the DataSet execute method is where you can execute a dataset from an activity rule. Specify the dataset name. It's going to be customer details. And then the operation is going to be save, because we are going to import some data. And then you can also save list of pages into the file. So in real time, if you want to export some data, you may have some list of data, right? So you can use this option and then specify a page list. Before that, we have to populate the page list. Now I will quickly show you how we can populate a page list with some dummy data. So here I'm using the page list property customer details.px results and do a save. Now when you run this activity, this should create a new file into the repository location, and you should also put the data into the file. Before running this activity, I would like to show you the file path location. You see here we just have a file customer details which we used for last demo. Now let's create a new CSV file. Now run this activity. You should see the success message. Now go to the file location. And you see a file has been created just now, but there is a small error that the date time is not perfectly appended to the file name. But I'm just going to discard this error. And you see a unique ID is created. First, let's check the content of this file. I'm going to open it with the Visual Studio Code. And there you see the name is Prem Kumar. Now we have successfully copied the data from an activity. We called the dataset execute method and then created a new CSV file, and under the CSV file you can see the value rightly exported. So now you know with the dataset you can do two ways. You can just do the file listener processing of importing the data, and you can also do the connect file processing of exporting the data into a file. Now the final thing which I want to show you is to use a manifest file to import some data. To use a manifest file, you should always provide an XML file. I have already prepared the XML file. I will show you the content of this XML file. To create a manifest file to use in the dataset, you should follow these XML tags. I will also give you a link where you can find this standard format. You should specify manifest tag, and inside there you can specify the files. You can specify multiple files here, and then you can specify all the file names. I also created customer 1 and customer 2 file. In customer 1 I have Prem, and in customer 2 I have Pega. Now with this manifest you can configure multiple file names, and your data cell will rightly find the file name and then use it into the browse or save operations. Just remember that the location is exactly to the repository location. It means it will try to find the customer1.csv file into the repository location. If it is in the other location, use the right path here, otherwise you will get some kind of error. Now I'm going to place everything into the repository location. So customer 1 will be there, customer 2 will be there, and the manifest file will be there. You see now all these three files are there. Now let's specify this customer manifest.xml into the rule configuration. You can also click preview file to check the content. Everything looks perfect. Now do a save. All other configurations remains the same. Now if you click run, let's browse the data. Let's see if we get the results from both the files. Just click run. You should see two results, and in the first result you see my name, and in the second result you see Pega name. So by this way you can have multiple files in the manifest file, and you can just use whatever operations you want. You can also truncate the files. If you use this truncate file and just do a run, you will see the files will be disappeared from the file system. If you go to file system, now you check only the manifest file stays there. Customer 1 and customer 2 got truncated or it got deleted. You wonder how this file operation works? With Pega 8.4, Pega uses a lot of repository APIs, repository data APIs. That can create file, that can create folder, that can check file, that can retrieve file. You can do a lot of operations. If you go to repository instance and click validate repository, it makes API calls here and checks if a file exists, new folder is able to create, and you can see the status of each and every API call. So that is how the underlying architecture works. As I say every time, Pega makes it easy for us. All you have to do is just do some configurations here and there, and the engine code will take care of execution. I already explained about using the YouTube as a dataset source in my blog article. I'll also provide a link at the description of this video which you can look into. You can also explore on the Kafka thing, which I will explain it in some later part of this video series. I really find it interesting in the configuration of this data set. I hope you also find the same. I'll see you soon in the next video.